Welcome along, everybody, wherever you are joining us from. No mai, haere mai, good to see you. If you're coming back to see us again, welcome back. If this is your first Right Online live Q&A, welcome along. Good to see you. So we're here about project planning. We have done a huge amount of project planning here at Right. We work on small and large scale things of all sorts of different types. So we're excited today to share some tips with you all about how we go about planning for projects, some things that you can do that are going to make a big difference for you, and some stories. Everybody loves some stories. So we've got Corinna and Meredith with us today, two very experienced professionals who I'm looking forward to getting some goodies out of today. And first of all, I just want to let you know that this Q&A is brought to you by Right Online. If you haven't heard about Right Online, you've probably been living under a rock. So go to rightonline.co.nz and you can see for yourself what it's all about. If you like the content that we're talking about today, you can get more of that by subscribing to Right Online. There are videos on just about anything to do with communication, thinking, anything of that nature. If you want to be a higher functioning professional, you should go to Right Online and have a go and see if it's for you. All right, so project planning. I'm going to ask our panelists today to introduce themselves and tell a little bit about their background, and then we'll get into some questions. So, Meredith, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Welcome everyone to this session. I'm a consultant at Write Group. I specialise in project management, technical writing, editing, proofreading and coaching. So it's a lot of little balls and all in the air that I juggle. The projects I work on often involve many parts, people and organisations, and most projects are content and time sensitive. Some projects are high profile with content embargoed until release or launch. I've worked on projects in New Zealand and overseas, and the projects span government and commercial. Before coming to Write, I was publications manager at an academic research centre, which I will give you a few tidbits about later, in Australia, where I managed the publication process and the in-house library. I'm a researcher, published author, and have been a sole trader. I've just become the New Zealand director on the board of directors for the Institute of Professional Editors, headquartered in Australia. And earlier in my career, I worked in commercial law firms across a range of support and practice management roles. So that's a bit about me.
Lovely. Kia ora, Meredith. Thank you for joining us. And Corinna, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thanks, Thomas. I come at it from a completely different angle to Meredith, even though we share a lot of the tasks that we do. I started out in life working with words as a proofreader, and my instinct is always to head towards the detail. And so for me, it's been quite a learning curve, learning about planning projects. And so today, even though over the years I've moved from proofreading to copy editing to bigger picture editing to all sorts of bigger projects, today I want to say that we're not here as project managers at all. We're here to give you insights into the way we plan projects at Write, bringing in experience we've had over the years. But I also want to appeal to those of you out there who are also detail people who get a bit panicky about project planning. I'm here for you.
Lovely. Thank you, Corinna. All right, folks. So the great thing about today, if you've been along to one of these Q&As, it is a Q&A. The Q is for question and the A is for answer. So for us to really put our consultants to work today, you can submit questions of your own. So you'll find down the bottom of the Zoom bar there's the Q&A function. Click that. Don't click the chat. We won't be looking. Click the Q&A function and pop your question in there. And then we will endeavour to get through as many questions as we possibly can in the short space that we have. So if you've come along with a question about project planning, something that has been on your mind for ages, put it in the Q&A function down the bottom. Shortly, I'm going to be asking Corinna and Meredith to share their top tips with us. So to really start with a bang, if something that they say gets you thinking, or you want to know a little bit more detail about what they're saying, or any specific things that they mention or tips or anything, put it in the Q&A down the bottom and we'll get through as many as we can. Okay, so the question I always start with on behalf of viewers before we get the questions rolling in is, what are your top 3 tips? We at Write, we love concise and punchy information. So we're going to start on that level. And we'll go in the other order now. So Corinna, if you had the floor, which you do now, to tell our lovely people who are listening out there, what are your top 3 tips for planning effective projects?
My first tip is actually one that applies across everything I do, everything we do at Write, which generally involves writing as well as project planning. But we talk about planning as an investment, that will save you time later on. So the most difficult projects are ones where people haven't clarified things before they start doling out tasks. So planning, huge plus point, so that you're not thinking out loud as you write your emails and type out lists of things for people to do. The second one is to understand your purpose, scope, desired outcomes before you start. And that also goes across writing projects as well. Clarifying your purpose. Why are you doing this? What is the scope? What do you want to achieve? Will help to just make it more manageable. So when I talked about being a detailed person, it's really easy for me to get overwhelmed by a big project. So narrowing things down at the start for what you actually are there for, why you're there, what you need to do, when you need to do it by. And the third one is to have clear timeframes to work to. So again, I need manageable chunks, milestones, a plan, accountability, everybody on the same page, all those things. So those are my three: planning, understanding what you're there for, and clear timeframes.
Yeah, really in line with a lot of our advice, similarly with just communicating clearly and knowing that purpose is so valuable. Okay, lovely, Corinna. Good stuff to start us off with. All right, Meredith, the floor is yours. Your top 3 tips for everybody watching out there.
Well, my first one is decide how you will record the project so that you can make all the parts of the project happen within the achievable time frame. Start with your project initiation documents. So those are the documents that support decision making and control. So examples are things like business case, project plan, project brief, and documents about your approach. Together, they reflect the current status of your project, and you'll refer to them as the project progresses. Include flexibility when planning each project stage, even if the decision points and deadlines are fixed, because that flexibility will allow you to test and tweak the project plan and as you go along, making it more responsive to changing needs. And when the project nears its end, you can compare it back to your original one. So that tells you how well the project performed. My second tip is identify risks and decide how you'll manage them to ensure project continuity. So consider things that might affect the project stages, like feedback rounds, deadlines, release dates. Another couple of questions to ask is funding guaranteed for the entire project? What will you do if funding moves to another project or indeed peters out? What will happen if a team member is taken off the project at short notice? Will external resources be available when you need them, such as subject matter experts, designers, suppliers? Do you have all necessary clearances? Always get clearances early, just a tip there, and include a risk assessment in your planning to answer these types of questions. And you can create a risk matrix if you think it'll work for you, maybe on a more complex project. And my third tip is make communications a strong pillar of your project. Some team members may offer to be on a project. Some may be assigned because they have specific expertise. Some might be assigned because they've got no choice. Each team member needs to believe they're a core member of the team and the project. So provide pathways for their contributions to be heard, noted, and respected. Keep the entire team up to date about the project, including any people who work remotely. And indeed, you may have remote places of business as well. Start by creating a communications plan. And remember to include how you intend to publicize your project internally and externally. I always think of communication, it's an intangible within a project. You can't touch it, yet keeping that communication, those communication channels open is vital to a project's success. So those are my three tips.
There's a lot
Good plan, consider risk, and then make communications a pillar.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, fantastic. Hey, folks, if you've just joined us, remember that you can submit questions. If anything that Corinna has said or Meredith has said that you want to know more information about, or you've brought along a burning question that you want to know the answer to, pop it down the bottom there in the Q&A, and we will get through as many questions as possible. Now, sometimes these types of topics are best brought to life with some stories. We've got those tips. That's a good place to start. I want each of you just to share a story from the road, something where you maybe learned a significant lesson, or something where it was a really good demonstration of what to do or what not to do. Either of those examples are fine. Corinna, could you share us a story for you based on that prompt?
Yeah, I had a job that felt overwhelming to me, a large government department who had a procurement manual that was 60 pages, portrait, full of words. And they said to me, we want to make this landscape more visual and 20 pages without losing anything important. Not a tall order at all. And as I started to slightly panic. I remembered a presentation at a team meeting we'd had where a colleague had shown a structure map. And a structure map sounded very fancy, but it turned out that in his case, he'd used an Excel spreadsheet. In my case, I used a Word table because I'm more used to working with Word. And I literally used the headings in the manual to map the current structure of it, all 60 pages, many headings, many pages. And then I did a suggested structure where I moved things around, but they could see what we were suggesting and compare the two. And then we had a notes column for comments to say, I'm moving this because this, or this content is duplicated here, so I think we can take it out. The difference that made was that the client felt like it might not be an impossible request after all. B, they could see that we respected the content that they had. We weren't just starting to whip things out willy-nilly. We were consulting with them. And C, there was a definite end in sight, that even though it was going to be a process to get there, they could see almost the roadmap. They could see their current structure, the suggested structure, and then start figuring out how it might fit. I also asked them to talk to the design team about a template. It turned out there was a template for a landscape manual that they could use. Just easing the way to say, yes, it's a 60-page manual. It's going to be a 20-page manual. How do we actually make this possible? And so I left them with it in the end. We didn't finish the project with them, but they felt confident, whereas they had started out feeling very tentative about whether they were asking something impossible.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, now there's lots in there. All right, Meredith, your turn. Let's share a story from the road for us.
I think project managing is a bit like crystal ball gazing. The problems, including any beyond your control and some of those on the project edges. So I've led many sort of successful publication projects, but the most successful ones have started because I guess have stayed with me because of the hurdles I've overcome on the way to reach the finish line. And so a project does come to mind. I was working with a US-based publisher on a multi-authored book. We got the published books, and I found an incomplete index, which I'd created, repeated pages, and no quotes from reviewers of the advanced copies. I contacted the publisher to find they'd used a pre-press version instead of the final version. Then I had to tactfully discuss the situation with the lead author. The publisher then had to retract thousands of copies for sale and thousands sent to libraries across the United States. That publisher's error cost them a lot of money and put them in breach of contract with us. So to avoid a costly error, make sure you keep control of the project throughout. Check the final version before publication and production. And if it's not possible, review the published work and look for costly mistakes. So you need to be able to closely monitor all parts of the project and ensure it's flexible enough to quickly adapt to change. We all know that keeping everyone isn't happy all the time. It's not possible. So just keep that in mind whenever you're handling a project. And the other one, I guess, is I found that handling difficult project requests and outcomes with diplomacy and dry wit can sometimes work. So can giving a visual to ponder. So I always think of no circular table is ever big enough to fit everyone around it. And invitees to a product launch once told me they'd only attend if they could all sit in the front row. And you can't have an L-shaped building, and wouldn't it all be nice if the buildings were all that shape? But sometimes people soften when you tell them an event can't be held across the wings of a plane, and you then go and explain where they'll be seated. So long as everyone has certainty in a project and the outcome of that project, they're a little more amenable to your approach. So
that's a good one
from me.
Yeah, the value of humor is very important. It can really shift people's focus, and see you more as more of a human, someone that's more relatable rather than just someone that's trying to keep everything to time, which you need to do. All right, lovely. Let's go to a couple of viewer questions. We've got a few coming in, so thanks, folks. You can keep asking Corinna and Meredith questions throughout the time that you're with us. So the first one here is from anonymous attendee. The question is, how do you balance planning and trying to anticipate various risks versus learning as you go? So I guess the question there is, we've got to think about risk. We've got to think about the things that are going wrong, but we've also got to keep our eyes on the prize, assuming that things are going to go right. So are there any tips that either of you can think of about maybe getting that balance right? Because you don't want the risks to overshadow maybe the things that you are strong at, and you don't want the worry to overcome, but also you don't want the risks to be a really minor thing. Meredith, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so the first thing I would say is with risks, this is where a risk matrix can help you. Identify what the priority is. So is it a risk that you need to address now, or is it related to another risk or an ongoing activity? And then almost park it somewhere if it's a closed risk that you can manage later. So then you do keep your eyes on the prize, if you like, of rolling your project along. When you're doing risks, don't just say something's low or moderate or high. You often get that in a matrix. Be specific about the risk, because then you can come back and you'll remember what it was. Once you go further along in the project, it's hard to sometimes remember what the risks were along the way, and that'll make them easier to assess later on. As far as the actual keeping the project going, the best thing there to do is to do those risks in one part of the day. It's almost like assess your risks at the start of a day. It's almost like what you would do with a stand-up meeting, 5 minutes. That's all it should take, so it doesn't get in the way of your day-to-day operations and the day-to-day project. That's what I would.
Yeah, and I guess it's one of those things as well that, because it's a certain type of view that you have when you're beginning the project. Often things seem easy. There's one deadline, you can see it all seems much more sensible from that angle. And then as soon as you get into the project, that's when things start getting a little more complicated. So I guess the wisdom there is you need to be thinking of risks, but also having regular times to check in with what the risks are at maybe different phases of the project.
You need to assess them and assign, even color coordinate them. If you don't want to do a risk matrix, is something red? Can you move it to orange? Have you accessed it? Can you move it to green? And therefore you've eliminated it. It's all that reduce, minimize.
Yep. Corinna, any thoughts on that one?
Oh, yeah, just that I struggle with risk as an abstract concept, and I like to make it more concrete in my own mind, particularly thinking about financial risk and reputation risk. So learning as you go is all very well, but is it potentially going to cost a lot of money if, you get sued or your website crashes? Reputational risk, obviously, is another huge one. It's very easy to spend years building trust and credibility, and it can all come crashing down because of one error. So I would be trying to quantify the risks that you know about. And learning as you go, I would be more likely to be tapping into other expertise in my organization or in the subject area, finding somebody with more experience, a mentor, or at least an equal that you can bounce ideas off. I would not be trying to do it on my own.
Yeah, definitely involving the team is a good one. And I think making tangible as well is a really important part of risk assessment, because sometimes the things that seem like really big risks are more of just a perception. And when you break down what the actual results of the realities of that risk are, sometimes the risks that you think are the big ones aren't so bad. And then there are the ones that, when you do a bit of digging, you can go, oh, we didn't think of that so much, but that's actually a big risk. So
I echo the comment about risk and communicating that risk. Never try to deal with a risk on your own. Think of note down all the parts of the risk that you've identified, but never think you're the only one with the entire picture of that risk either. And also, because there are other parts to it, and what you might think is just a risk to a business could end up becoming a risk to a product you're going to launch, a service you're going to deliver, or the overall business. So it's absolutely critical that a small risk can have all these different parts, and it can develop into something far larger, and you mightn't be the only one seeing the whole picture.
Okay, let's change topic here for a bit. Biplang has asked a question. What are the most important things to think of as a first-time project lead? So this might be a time just for us to return to some of those basic things, but is there something different that you think if someone's doing this for the first time, what would you recommend? Meredith, what would you say to someone who's going to lead a big project for the first time?
3 things. Find someone who's actually led a project before, who can be your mentor. As Corinna said, they can help you no end. The second is, if someone has done a similar project than that before, see if you can't leverage off it. Find the documents, the type of project they did, find out the component parts, who was involved, and they may also have a list there of all the different things that you need to consider when you're running a project. The other thing is to have a kick-off meeting with everyone involved with that project. And that's a great place for ideas and for getting the project momentum going. If you're running a project, you want to get everyone involved, and so that kick-off meeting is important.
Yeah, great. Corinna, I'm interested in your experience here, because your experience is kind of transitioning from not really working on big projects into it. What are some things, if you reflect back on the things that you would have loved to have been told, or any advice you would give to someone who is new to a project planning?
I think the worst advice I could give would be fake it till you make it. I think that's a terrible idea. I think for me, as I've got older, I've found it more and more it's about balancing confidence with humility. So it's being able to say to people, I think I'm capable of doing this, but I also need to be able to ask for help. And part of that is actually communicating with your team and saying, hey, if you think something I'm doing is a really bad idea, I want you to tell me. Giving people permission, particularly if they're junior to you and might not want to speak up, to say, hey, there is no such thing as a dumb question. If you think I'm on the wrong track, if you think there's something I haven't thought of, please tell me. And also accessing other expertise. I'd also like to put in a little plug for AI, which can be demonized sometimes. Getting AI to do donkey work. That, to me, that is the role of AI, is donkey work. It's not to replace our brains. Getting AI to tell you what else is out there. Using AI to say, okay, give me some examples of projects in this industry and how they panned out and what the risks were, what went wrong. Let AI go and do the donkey work for you. It's another idea.
Yeah, let's stay on AI for a little bit. Meredith, have you got any thoughts about how people who are watching could use AI to help out, especially if they're new to project planning?
I would say that for using AI, this is how I've used it. I've actually used it to create scenarios. So you can actually use AI to future-proof a project in a weird way by saying, if this is given this scenario, how do you think this will eventuate at the end? And it will give you some possible solutions, both to project stages and to the end of the project. So that's one thing it will do. So it can actually almost do that future thinking in a way, recognizing that it's working off a set parameters itself. So it's only good as the information you give it. So make sure you give it concrete information, enough information to extrapolate out. I would also use it to create examples of a project. Now, this project might be something that you're building. I've worked on documents that are everything to do with construction and building something, putting something together. So AI might be able to help tell you where the gaps are in your project equation, if you like, that project process. Have you missed a step? It might be able to just say, hey, these are the sorts of steps. Have you? And it will definitely come back, even if you give an example, it will come back and say, you've given this amount of information, but have you thought of X, Y, Z? So it's good for those sorts of things.
Yeah, great.
I also put in a plug for other tools as well, not just AI. We particularly use Trello. There's also Asana, Teams channels, using anything you can that helps you. So for us, quite often when there's a process involved in a project, Trello is quite a good visual way of having boards, checklists, and you're physically dragging them along to the next stage. And you can have the people on the team being notified when something's moved to a place where they need to do something with it. So having a look at what other things can help you keep everybody informed, keep the communication channels open.
I would say make project management tools your friend. If you can, if you find one that works for you, use it. They can improve accountability, collaboration, and allocation of resources. They can show a project's schedule over time. They can tell you who is doing what and when. And they can prevent bottlenecks and delays and overlaps. So they're a great way to keep a project on track.
Yeah, lovely. There's a question here while we're in the tools zone. There's a question here, and we may or may not have an answer for this one. Are there any good short courses that we would recommend? That we're not probably going to recommend that you have to go on full Prince training, project management training. Are there any short courses we're aware of that we could recommend? If not, we can follow up this webinar with something.
Yeah, I think that would probably be something I would be asking about in my organization, of what's been used in the past that works in that particular environment. It's quite hard to recommend something that would work in any area.
Yeah.
It is. It's hard to, without knowing sectors, etc., and markets, and also the aim of the actual training as well.
Yes.
So what is your intended outcome for it? What is your business outcome for it?
Yeah.
Is it a personal goal? So I think you just need to assess that. I would say try, before going on, as you say, not a full Prince thing, try doing some short courses and easing yourself in if you haven't studied in a long time. So if you haven't been at workshops or been on courses, even online things. Just give yourself a little bit of a break and do some short stuff and lead you, like building blocks of education, and build yourself up.
Lovely. Okay, hey, we've got time for kind of one last little bit. You've both mentioned at different points in the Q&A about the importance of communication. I just want to get within this context of managing a project. Corinna, you talked about it in your example that the client had really high expectations and they really wanted stuff at a certain quality. Could you both summarize some key communication tips for those folks out there who are project planning? So this might be, what type of language should people use? Are there any particular type of documents that you should pay particular attention to? Or is there anything you should know about how people receive information? So anything within the world of good communication and thinking about what's going to benefit people in a project sense. Who wants to go first?
I'll go with a few. Decide how and when communication will take place and over what platform or service. Record regular catch-ups for the project team. Now, please ask them if they're happy. Obviously, as a business, you can decide whether you're happy for recording, etc. Decide and confirm early on how to manage version control tasks. I can't emphasize this enough, both within projects and documents. Have sign-offs at project waypoints to signal responsibility and accountability. It's important that everyone stays on task and on track. And I can't emphasize this, always leave room for your team to contribute. It's like recognizing they have the power to help deliver an effective project.
Lovely. Okay, Corinna.
Yeah, I would say my top tip would be to have one source of truth. So talk to people about having one place where all the information lives. I think we've all ended up with, we know somebody said something, but was it in an email? Was it in Teams? Did they text me? Is it on the Trello board? And you don't even know where to start looking. So we have had things like a Teams channel for a big proofreading project where two of us were working on it, and the documents were all coming in dribs and drabs, first in Word and then in PDF. And we ended up using a Teams channel with a tracking sheet attached to it. So that was a live document, and we were each ticking off what we had done and where it was at in the system, I think in a Word table. But having one place so that people aren't messaging one person but nobody else on the team knows, just that keeping things transparent and clear so people can find all the information they need in one place.
Yeah, great. That's good advice. Okay, well, that's just about the end of our time, but I'm going to pass to our consultants shortly for their final word. So hang on, you might get one more little piece of gold out of this Q&A. Don't log off just yet. We had an anonymous attendee ask us a question here. Did Corinna just mention the best way isn't to fake it till you make it? It's more about balancing confidence with humility? If so, love that. Great piece of advice there. So I'm going to pass again to our consultants for their last word, but just a reminder, if you've liked anything that you've heard today, if you've liked hearing from Meredith and Corinna, they're both contributed to Write Online videos. There's a whole bunch of content in there. Go to writeonline.co.nz and see if it's for you. You would be amazed at the amount of stuff that we have in there and that you can learn, including, this is Q&A number 26 on all sorts of different topics that you can sit and listen to while you're working or having your lunch or looking out the window or walking the dog, whatever your style is. So go to writeonline.co.nz, see if it's for you. And now I'll hand it over to our consultants for their final words. Meredith, one final piece of advice for those who are watching with us.
Yes, I would say to immediately inform the people who are making decisions, because you may not be the ultimate decision maker. Someone may be holding the purse strings, and other project holders might be involved as well. If you have found any weaknesses within the project's foundation that might then cause things to run out of control later on. So that's part of making sure that you keep control of that project from the start to the finish. And if something starts to go out of whack, out of scope, tell someone. Don't let it run on.
Good advice. Okay, Corinna, the last word is yours.
Oh, goodness. I would say that remembering when I first started out in my 20s, which is a long time ago, I was very intimidated by big projects and by thinking everybody knew more than me, type of imposter syndrome. I would say if you are a junior person in the company being given responsibility, then use the knowledge around you talk to people who know more about it than you. And if you're middle management or senior, then look at how you can bring people along with you, how you can mentor people, how you can help to equip them to build their confidence, delegate things that you know they're capable of doing. But just think about it always as, yes, I'm managing this project, but how am I talking to people? And is it a way that's inclusive and transparent and brings people along with me, which is a life skill we all need.
Oh, well, on that note, I think that's too perfect not to end on. Thanks very much for joining us, folks. Thanks, Corinna. Thank you, Meredith, for your time. We hope to see you again shortly.